Hey guys, it's Lee Taylor. That's the 2022 Renault Arkana, and this is a Right Lane review. Midsize SUV market offers plenty of options, tons of practicality, all the engine choices you would want, and lots of style. But if you want to go a little bit left field and get something a bit different, you can have one of these, an SUV coupe. So up until recently, if you wanted to buy into the SUV coupe thing and wanted the European flair, you had to spend somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. But now Renault's here. For half the price, you get the same bit of flair, and with the typical Renault left field approach. So how is the Renault Arkana out on the road? Well, to begin with, it's a nice little roundabout car. Now, Renault, as I've said before, makes really good hatchbacks and really good just kind of day-to-day commuters, and this is definitely one of those day-to-day commuters. It gives you the style, a little efficient engine package. It's easy to see out front. It's a little bit more difficult to see out the back because of the coupe body. You have like big buttresses in the back, or big pillars, I should say, and a smarter window thanks to the back being so raked. But you do have blind spot monitors and stuff like that to compensate. And when you're moving around town, it feels quite nice. The gearbox works really smoothly. There's nothing out of the ordinary. You have park sensors all the way around, so you can maneuver out of tight spots really easily. The park assist is quite good and reliable. It's got, like I said before, blind spot monitors, all the normal safety systems, so forward collision warning, forward stop assist, rear cross traffic alert, all that sort of thing. The rear view camera's a bit grainy and a bit crap quality, but look past it. But overall, it's just a nice little efficient SUV coupe thing to enjoy. If this is what you're after for a day-to-day, this is a pretty good package. Dynamically, the car is nothing special to write home about. This isn't RS anything, right? So it's pretty subtle suspension, and the ride quality in this thing is absolutely fantastic for its price point. There's very little to gripe about from that. We've been driving the car to Bendigo and back today to film, and it is actually lovely to be in. It's quite comfortable across the Calder Highway, which is notorious for pulling out cars who are a bit stiff. But this is quite good. The steering has a couple of different modes depending on which drive mode you're in, and while comfort mode's a bit mushy and weird, it's okay in regular mode. In sport mode, it just wanes up a bit and it's perfectly fine. And speaking of modes, you have my sense mode, which is kind of a configurable mode, which is just really just the steering and throttle. And then you have an eco mode, which pulls everything back, and then sport mode, which makes a little gearbox and the 1.3 liter engine a bit more alive. And the engine and gearbox combination, I think, is a really good pairing. You have a little 1.3 turbocharged engine, about 117 kilowatts, and 269, I think, newton meters of torque, which is a lot of torque out of a little 1.3 going through the front wheels in a family SUV coupe thing. So it's a fantastic little package. Now, it could do with stickier tires, so it doesn't spin out the front wheel as much because it's dealing with a lot of torque to the front end. But it makes the car feel quite nippy. It's perky on town. You don't really have to worry about passing power. It's got plenty for day-to-day work, and it feels quite nice in the hand. Sometimes these smaller SUVs, when they're packed with a small engine and a CVT gearbox, can feel a bit slow and laggy and just not responsive. But the Renault, in my sense, normal mode or regular mode and sport mode, feels quite snappy and quite responsive, and it's something you want when you're trying to zip in and out of traffic or move along the freeway or backward quite well. It's just a nice little place to be. It's, from a Renault perspective, it's pretty much typical Renault, a well-packaged car with a good ride quality and a decent engine. But also with that Renault bit comes all the Renault isms. So things aren't quite where you expect them to be. So behind the wheel you have your little nubbin for all the audio controls, which may seem out of place at first, but when you get used to it, as I had in my Megane RS, it actually becomes super intuitive. So you never actually look down to change the station or turn the volume up or down. It just becomes part of your general movement. And the controls on the steering wheel are pretty much where they're supposed to be. Now, the R-Link system, or the new R-Link system, is a bit clunky. I like the portrait style, and you can read it easily, but it's a bit hard to deal with when you're driving. So, for example, if you want to turn on the heated seats, it's like a 3-step process, which I'll talk about more later. So it becomes a bit more distracting than it is anything else. And that's a bit of a problem for an infotainment system's job, is to make it a bit easier for the driver when you're going down the road, or make it a bit more enjoyable, and it just doesn't. Just stick with Apple CarPlay, and if you're going to buy a new Renault, it's just better. But if you can look past the quirks, this is a fantastic little commuter, and honestly, another win for Renault. So how's the cabin on the Arkana? Well, to start with, I actually really enjoy the layout of this cabin. I think it's really prettily presented. You have some nice trim, the ambient lighting, all the controls are pointed towards the driver, and a nice seat as well, and you sit behind a nice touch Renault wheel, with most of your controls here at hand, some paddles for the transmission. You do have the typical Renault audio nubbin for volume and mode and selection and whatnot. And in this Intense model, we have a partial digital dash, and in the RS line, you can upgrade to a full digital unit. In the middle is the portrait style infotainment screen, which is beautiful to look at, and I like, again, how it's presented, but everything's just a few steps too far. Like if I want my seats cool, I have to press the button, and then I have to turn the driver's seat on, and then I have to tell it how much breathing I want it to do. Like it's just too many steps, and that seems to be the theme throughout the cabin. Places are in kind of odd spots, like the heated steering wheel's over here, and lane keep assistance over here, which is all right, but then like your parking's over here, and your sense button's too many clicks, and it all looks really well. It's a nice place to be and comfortable, but it does have its quirks. So how's the back seat in the Arkana? Well, to start with, if you're tall or 6 foot over, you may have a little bit of an issue with knee room and some headroom just because of the roof line, but if you're on the lower end of that, you should be fine. It's nice and comfortable back here. Seats are nice and supportive. You have a couple of USB points for charging some phones, vents for the aircon, your typical armrest, and some cup holders. So overall, a pretty typical small to medium SUV. So how's the boot in the back of the Arkana? Well, to start with, you have a nice big opening thanks to the hatch in the rear, and on the inside, there is a ton of space. You also have a separated load floor, so you have a higher setting that gives you kind of a privacy space underneath, and if you set the load floor lower, you can have a bit more height since you lose a bit with the sloping roof. But overall, there's plenty of space, and it's incredibly usable. So what's the tops, bottoms, and final verdict on the 2022 Renault Arkana? Well, on the bottom are a couple of things to keep in mind for another medium to small SUV. One's the fact that this coupe body, though nice on the side, does have some angles that aren't necessarily my favorite, so get a good look before you buy. And on the inside, it has all of the Renault quirks and kind of French isms. And so if you're going to live with the car, definitely spend some time to get to know them, because buttons are in weird places and things do different things than you expect. You just kind of get used to it. But my biggest gripe is the infotainment unit. It just seems a bit old and clunky, and it's kind of a step back from the last gen. So what's on top for the Arkana? Well, if you're into the SUV coupe thing, you would be happy to know this car starts under 40 grand for this lovely silhouette. And on the inside, it's actually plenty of space and lots of usable features if you can get over the quirks. And it drives really, really well. The 1.3 engine is nice and punchy, and the transmission, everything work really well together. And it's a beautiful, smooth ride on a long country trip like we did today in Bendigo. So definitely give it a look. So what's my final verdict on the 2022 Renault Arkana? Well, I have to admit it is quite a niche little SUV, being the cheapest SUV coupe on the market, and it has plenty of Renault-isms to look at. So if you want to give it a test drive, see if you can get past the quirks, because it could possibly give you quite the nice little drive. This is my thermometer. How's the boot in the back of the Arkana? How's the boot in the back of the Arkana? Well, to start with, you have a nice big coupe rear end, so it's a nice hatch. But the sleeping roof,